ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our town council meeting. This Tuesday, June 14th, 2022. I'm calling this meeting to order. Roll call. Albert Johnson.
Present.
David Harwood.
Here.
Melissa Pickett.
Here.
Doug Matheson.
Here.
And Pete Greeny.
Here.
All right, if you would, please, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, council approval of minutes, May 10th, 2022. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Okay, we have a double. Okay, who was first?
Whoever else was on the side.
Pick one.
Who was second?
Pete.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Approval of minutes, May 17th, 2022, budget workshop. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Go ahead.
Okay, Melissa was first, Doug was second. Any discussion? Okay. Council?
Aye.
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 All right, approval of the regular agenda adoption. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Okay. Albert? David?
Aye.
Melissa?
Aye.
Doug?
Aye.
And Pete?
Aye.
Okay. Consent agenda. Budget Amendment 2022-08, Laurel Lane contract approval in Blowing Rock ABC store. Do I have a motion?
So made.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Albert? David?
Aye.
Melissa?
Aye.
Doug?
Aye.
And Pete?
Aye.
Okay, so consent passes. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're at our public comment section. If you would like to come up to the podium and take your 3 minutes to speak on issues or good things or whatever, please step over and give Hillary your name or not. Wow. Okay. All right. We have no public comments, council. All right, moving right along. Public hearing. This is the public hearing for the 2023 budget. We will let, we're going to, it's on here, Manager Shane Fox. We're going to say AKA Ms. Norman. Hello, Nicole. How are you?
Hi, good. How are
Good,
you?
good.
I'll just say, as Ms. Norman's getting ready, that appreciate the time that you all have spent reading through this document. It continues to grow, obviously, each year, and more reading is required as we continue to add things to the budget. Thank you to Ms. Norman for putting in all the effort and the work that it takes to get to where we are tonight. Tonight is the public hearing, so this does allow for us to move forward with potentially adopting the budget if you so choose so tonight. So.
Hello, good evening. I'm going to review for everyone just a brief summary of the recommended budget, kind of try to hit the highlights as much as we can. So the FY 22-23 recommended budget. That never works for me. I don't know. There we go. Okay. We're going to start off with the general fund revenues, taking a look at the major components of the general fund revenues. So property tax, sales tax, occupancy tax, and then a category of other revenues are the main revenue contributors for the general fund. So as we move through, we're going to look at each of those components in depth and kind of see what we're looking at for the new fiscal year. This other revenues category has a couple different components to it. We have debt proceeds, sales and service revenues such as recycling fees, Parks and Rec program fees, as well as permits and fees with the town. So that's what makes up that area of revenues. This is a look at our pie chart, and that's a visual representation of these revenues. So you can see property tax right over here makes up 46% of the FY 22-23 budget. Following it is occupancy tax at 18%. I'm sorry, following it is sales tax at 20%, and directly following sales tax is occupancy tax at 18%. And then we can see right over here, our other revenue section, only representing 8%, but still falling in the area of a main revenue source. All right, looking at property tax. So for FY 22-23, we have our 2022 Watauga County revaluation coming into play in the New Year's budget. So for Blowing Rock itself in Watauga County, so not for the entire county, but for Watauga County itself, we saw average tax base growth of 35.4%. We can kind of look at our history of tax base change. You can see the past 3 years, I'll just highlight those. 2021, 0.7% growth, 21-22, 2.5% growth, and then 22-23, 35.4% growth. So you can see that this year brought the greatest tax base changes that we've seen in a while. Okay, so the law requires the town to calculate and publish a revenue neutral rate each time we have a tax revaluation. So this year's revenue neutral rate is 32 cents. Now, what the revenue neutral rate is the rate that would generate equal revenue to the prior year, taking into account the new valuation. So that 35.4% growth in our tax base, this tells us what rate would we use to generate equal revenue, taking that into account. So the recommended tax rate, this is a good time to let you know that this presentation through and through will be the recommended budget. We have had a budget work session with town council, and so there are changes that followed that budget work session that are going to be summarized at the end. So council, if you're thinking, wait a minute, that's a little different, we're going to see those changes at the end. So we're starting off with what was recommended. All right, so the recommended tax rate, as I said, 36 cents. Okay, here's a look at the value of 1 penny on the tax rate and how the valuations have changed that value, and also the rates have changed that value. So you can see FY 21-22, the value of 1 penny was $122,000, and this year it's calculated to generate $165,265. All right, this is the tax revenue change. So this one takes into account the recommended rate of 36 cents. So you can see last year, revenue generated from property tax was 8.8%. This year, we're looking at 12.1 with the rate of 36 cents. Okay, this is just a look at how Blowing Rock compares to other areas' tax rates. Now, this, you can see, is as of this year, 21-22. Because we never really know until a budget is adopted, we just looked at the most recent adopted tax year. This year's going to be different for everybody. So we'll see how it all shakes out next year when we're looking at this comparison. But Blowing Rock, you can see at 43 cents, which is our current tax rate, compared to Boone at 44, Seven Devils 51, and Beach Mountain 73.2. Sales tax is our next main revenue component. We are under the ad valorem method. We are estimating a 17% increase for this year, 21-22. The budget, however, anticipates a 5% increase above that for next fiscal year, 22-23. We generally follow the League of Municipalities estimates on our state collected revenues like this. However, we also take into account our own individual history and collection rate in conjunction with that. So based on the league estimate as well as our history with sales tax, we are looking at a 5% increase for next year. Okay, here is a look at our total net collections of sales tax. So you can see for fiscal year 22-23, we are budgeting $1,436,000 to be collected in sales tax. That's going to be comprised of, we still track under the per capita method the revenues that we would have, and then the change in revenues due to the Watauga County ad valorem method collection. So this is net of the fee to Watauga County that we do remit back to them. All right, this is a look at sales tax projections for the current year. So everything up to the dotted line was already collected, and solid numbers, we knew that that's what we would be collecting. Everything beyond that line, so we're looking at March through June, were projections. So we kind of start with last year's baseline and where we're trending, and we produce our projections right here. You can see the black area. Black area represents the additional collected due to the collection method change. All right, occupancy tax. Fiscal year to date, gross occupancy taxes at 23.5%. At the time of this presentation, we had not collected April. We have since collected April, so I'm going to tell you that March was only up 1%, but everybody can breathe a little easier that April was actually back up to trend at 23%. So that was just a little blip, strange blip in March. So we are budgeting a conservative 3% increase in fiscal year 22-23 with a contingency plan. So this is just a look at March, and you can kind of see this is what's presented to the TDA board at their meetings. They can kind of track two things. You can track fiscal year to date. Again, this is March, so you can see we were just below 1% there, but up compared to prior fiscal years. And we've kind of been trending that way, as I said, about 23% over last year. Okay, talking about occupancy tax, the amount remitted to the town is $666,768, or that's the amount budgeted to be remitted to the town in the next fiscal year. These are just those expenditures that flow through the town, so they're usually town-related items. So you can kind of see, I won't read them all. You can, maybe you've already started, but we have park restroom attendant, they contribute $70,000 towards that. Landscape and beautification, Christmas decorations, sidewalks, and then half of the Highway 321 landscaping that we all see out there. So all combined, these expenditures and uses total that $666,768. Okay, taking a look at other revenues, we'll look at a couple areas in there. One of the components of other revenues is ABC revenues. So you can see the level contributions the past couple years. We are expecting to receive additional funding from the ABC store this year. They are expecting additional quarterly distributions. They distribute to us quarterly, and they also, at the end of the year, they look at their revenues and how it compared to budget, and they do sometimes are able to give us a contribution from those proceeds. So they've had a couple of great years, and they do expect that to continue. So the ABC store is looking to contribute to us $300,000 in additional revenues for this fiscal year, and they also anticipate an additional $300,000 to next fiscal year. Since that's one-time revenue, we are looking towards, within the fiscal year, one-time allocations for those. General fund expenditures, this is a look at the other side of the world. So general fund expenditures are budgeted at $12,800,725. And you can see again our pie chart We have the areas of central government at 32%. Police department at 14, fire at 11, planning at 3, street at 12, and you can look through. Every department has sort of a percentage within the whole. Okay, this is a look at general fund expenditures by major category of personnel, operating and maintenance, and then capital and debt service. So you can see the total percentage there is 22% increase. We're looking at an overall 17% increase in personnel, 29% in operating maintenance, 37% increase in capital, and 12% in debt service. So we're gonna dig a little deeper into some of these changes. Materials and supplies, I will point out, something that we've been watching is the vehicle maintenance and fuel. Town is feeling that like everyone else. So we have our increases budgeted in there. All right, within the budget, in the personnel section, there is a 2.5% cost of living adjustment increase in base pay to all general employees. There's also an adjustment to the pay scale and salaries to affect the final half of our minimum wage increase initiative that started last fiscal year. So we affected percentages to each grade in order to get our lowest grade to a $15 an hour minimum. So what that amounted to is about a 7% increase, average, basically an average increase for all employees. The recommended budget also recommended the addition of 3 new positions: a finance accounting support specialist, an IT director, and a park attendant, which is planned to be fully funded by the TDA. We would continue full town funding of the SRO, School Resource Officer, at Blowing Rock School, and continue funding a 5% 401k for all general and law enforcement employees. The town did experience a 14% turnover rate. Again, that's kind of happening everywhere, really. We had 10 new employees for filling existing positions, so there's definitely a cost to that turnover rate. So we're seeing that in our 17% increase in personnel that we saw earlier. We added 2 new dispatch positions mid-year, so those are reflected in the recommended budget and continued funding for those. And now we'll kind of dive into the different sections of the expenditures. So we have some departments grouped together. This is going to be general government starting off. Looking at general government, that's going to include governing body, admin, finance, and central government itself. So that function accounts for about 38% of the general fund budget. Okay, this is going to include insurance premiums for general liability and workers' comp, continued payment to Watauga County of the 70% ad valorem versus per capita sales tax rate, technology improvements, community library financing, and then within here we do have those 2 of the new positions. The finance and accounting support specialist and the IT director position would both be in this category. We have some directional signage that will be TDA funded, museum improvements, town hall improvements. The facility study, I will say that those funds are set aside right now, but if they're not used for a facility study, they're planned to be used for actual improvements for town hall. We just kind of had placeholders for that. We also have our comp plan coming up. That'll be a 2-year expense, so the first half, $50,000 in this next fiscal year. The next half will follow that. Next category in general government, again, is going to be public buildings and grounds. There's various facility improvements in here. We do have our debt service for the emergency services building, Braun parking facility that's funded by the TDA, and then the public works building renovations, as well as holiday decorations and tree planting. These holiday decorations are not the Main Street holiday decorations, but they are really right here in the heart of town at Town Hall. Okay, next category is going to be police and fire and public safety. This is 26% of the general fund budget, and we continue to provide, again, this SRO at Blowing Rock School. This includes replacement of 2 vehicles, maintained funding for the part-time parking enforcement. The budget recognizes, well, does not recognize, rather, anything for any paid parking to happen in the future. We decided to keep things constant, and then when the paid parking plan, is further along and, plans are known, that will come to town council for a decision altogether as an amendment to the budget. So right now, this kind of keeps things status quo. We do have a couple of radios and DARE program funding here. Some of the capital items for this department would be replacement of 2 SUVs with graphics, lights, and cameras, and 2 portable radios and 2 radar units, totaling $140,000. Okay, transportation is our next area, which is public works, the street department. So this is about 12% of the total general fund budget. We have right-of-way clearing, we have a master signage plan maintenance, and we also have lighting for Highway 321. Road repairs, culvert replacement, ditch line repairs, and capital for this department would be replacement of a chipper, replacement of a Ranger, and then 2 new traffic message signs, totaling $124,965. Next in the general fund is Public Works, Sanitation, and Recycling Department, and this area accounts for 3% of the general fund budget. Some of the major initiatives are just continuing the residential curbside recycling program, continuing funding for residential solid waste collection, and then commercial garbage pickup via contracted services with Republic. So there's no capital in this department. Next, we have planning and inspection. So this is 3% of the general fund budget. So this is going to continue with that implementation of the 2014 comprehensive plan update, and then plans to proceed with the revision to the comprehensive plan update. And so we have and continued funding for the permit application review and approval and inspection process. Parks and Recreation is Parks and Recreation is the final department within the general fund, and they make up 13% of the budget. We have continued funding for the part-time staff and Memorial Park attendants, funding for the additional full-time park attendant, and then continued funding, of course, for landscape and beautification, which is actually partly funded by BRAC. There's also the landscaping costs for Highway 321 are covered within this department. So looking at some of the capital that were in the recommended budget would be new MRSITE coating. I'm probably saying that wrong, but okay, MRSITE coating for the pool. A heater was proposed for the landscape bay, and then replacement of the 1999 E-Z-GO golf cart and a mini excavator. So their capital totals $156,000 for their equipment. Looking at some projects within this department is New Year's Creek dredging, a study for that at $30,000. Memorial Park wall completion, the wall that is in front of Memorial Park, at another $30,000. And then Devamp Fields pavilion skins repair at $16,000. Okay, BRAC is a fund within itself. So for the BRAC fund, that represents about $39,900, and BRAC is a self-supporting fund. So their revenues are from contributions and fundraisers that they do. So we're looking at funding to support landscape and beautification of public property, downtown hanging baskets and planters, cleanup day and planning day. And they also contribute towards town center landscape and beautification within the Parks and Rec department in the general fund. Okay, this is a summary of our general fund capital. So These are installment purchase funded, so that's $396,965. The town will be going out for a bid for these items and then trying to secure installment financing for them through a bank loan. Water sewer fund revenues. So moving on to the next fund. The main components of the water sewer fund are pretty simple. It's water charges, sewer charges, and then again, that category of other revenues. For the water sewer fund, the other revenue category is comprised of debt proceeds and then impact or connection fees. So this is a look at our pie chart for the water sewer fund. That's the wrong button. There we go. Water charges are at 47%. Sewer charges represent 41%. And then the miscellaneous or other revenue is just 8% of the budget. So mainly really looking at water and sewer charges. And the water sewer fund, just like the BRAC fund, is self-supporting. So we are on year 2 of a 5-year rate change plan. Last year, we made a change. I think we increased water and sewer rates 10%, and we also adjusted the base for what is included in the minimum. We had the state come in. It was a great process and needed to be done, hadn't been done in quite a while. And the state came in and took a look at our water sewer rates and our water sewer revenues and all the things that we needed to pay for, the expenditure side, and they did a rate study for us, and they helped us develop a plan. So we are in year 2 of the plan. Year 2 calls for a 5% increase in our water sewer rates. So you can see here, we completed year 1 or 10% with our minimum change from 5 to 3,000. In year 2, we're looking at that 5% increase. Okay, looking at the expenditure side of the water sewer fund. So we have 3 main departments of the water sewer fund. Admin and billing, 900, or let's go with percentages, 39%. Plant operations is 36% of the budget, and field operations is 25% of the budget. So just taking a look at a few initiatives within those departments. Looking at the water sewer fund, this is the water sewer fund as a whole. We cover debt service for water sewer capital, the capital improvement plan for plant upgrades. We do transfers from water sewer, we call it the water sewer general fund, to our capital fund for plant upgrades and line replacements and repairs. The field operations department staff maintains the water and sewer collection system, and then the plant staff maintains the water and sewer plants. So this covers repairs. There is one item of capital for the water sewer fund this year. It's a new front end loader. So that is estimated to be $187,000. I know that looks like an exact number, so when I say estimate, you probably think, really? We did get quotes. We usually get preliminary quotes. So again, that will be installment purchase financed, and we just have the one item for the water sewer fund there. Okay, looking ahead, there may have been some initiatives that, have been talked about, and we know are kind of, there's a buzz about them in town, but you didn't hear me talk about them in the budget. Well, some of those items will come to council individually as plans progress. One of those things are Main Street water and sewer line replacements. We're using state earmarked ARPA funds for those. So once we have, bids, and we'll follow all the process of bids and applying for the funds to actually be distributed and all that, we will bring those to council separately. So that's why they're not shown here. We don't know enough about the actual numbers to propose them in the budget yet. Plant upgrades and Mayview lift station rehab. We plan to use an SRF loan to fund those needed items. And again, similar to the Main Street water and sewer line replacements, we will bring those separately to town council throughout the year. AMI, meter reading technology upgrades, much anticipated project for the town. We're looking at funding it through installment loan proceeds. And again, once we have more of the plan in place, we'll bring that to town council. Okay, so in the beginning, I said that this this presentation represented the recommended budget. So through the budget work session, there were changes that took place. And this is a summary of those changes and the revenue that covered the changes. So we did increase the tax rate from the recommended 36 cents to 37 cents. That's $162,776 of additional tax revenue to cover the items that I will go over with you. There was a fund balance allocation of $60,979. That fund balance allocation is used to cover one-time expenditures that, were a part of the budget work session. And those are all going to be listed below. So we're going to go over these revenue sources, and then we're going to see exactly what items they went to. So we did increase the ABC store contribution. We knew that those were going to come in better than we had included in the budget. So we had that increase there. The installment purchase proceeds, we plan to use those, well, I'm ahead of myself. So there are 2 additional police officers that are a part of the amended recommended budget. So that's where the vehicles come into place, and we're recommending covering those expenditures through installment finance proceeds as we're doing the rest of the capital. Let's see. Board Hill Lake Spillway, that was an item that was not included in the recommended budget, but we did mean to. So we included that there as a deduction to the revenue, so a cost. Salary discrepancies, so we kind of continue to work with everything, even after we've submitted the recommended budget, and we did find a few differences that we needed to cover in order for everything to be correct. So that was about $4,000 in difference. We did remove the heater that was recommended for the landscape bay, and there you can see the addition of 2 police officers. And then in central government, that's the equipment for the 2 officers, and then the vehicles below it. So hopefully that all made sense and wasn't too fast. I was trying to keep it as short as I could with covering everything.
Great job.
Thank you.
Councilman?
I've got something I just want to ask. It's not bothersome, but this is a book that we get, and I'm not sure it's publicly distributed.
It's posted on the website, and we do have one at Town Hall.
And it's on page 21 of the Fiscal Outlook. And I'm going to read what, it's not troubling me, I just want an explanation. And I'm sure it came from you.
Okay.
Shane.
Okay.
Due to our size and constrained geographic borders, the town of Blowing Rock will not likely grow its way into significant increased revenues, even if the economy were to come roaring back. It is more apparent that we must continue to make high-value choices that focus on our people and our infrastructure if we are to care and protect this wonderful community in the way it has come to expect and deserve. And I've seen some rosy revenue projections, and then I've seen beyond that stability. Is this statement reflecting on a mean anywhere, like an average, mean average, or somebody elaborate on this statement, because it's getting upside down for me with some of the things I see.
Sure. Yeah, I'd be glad to, if I may. So in the budget message, there's a period at the end in which I guess the best term to use, it's almost a reflection that is written by myself. And the reflection there is that if you take out the reevaluation process that we've had every 8 years, our growth is fairly minimal. Each year we have 2%, 3%, 4% growth. We don't see a tremendous amount of growth because of new industry. We do have new hotels coming on, but we don't see huge amounts of growth, and we haven't seen huge amount of growth due to the fact that we are somewhat limited in our geographical area to grow. And so we don't have industry that's coming in and providing hundreds of millions of dollars worth of investment. So we see residential growth through new homes, renovations, things like that. That's kind of the consistent growth that we have. And so as we look to prioritize the budget each year, we look at, obviously, our largest asset, which is our individuals, that we believe we're doing a good job in taking care of, and then the infrastructure piece that we have to maintain, water, sewer, things of that nature. So it's a reflection of continuing to make sure that we keep the eye on the prize, so to speak, with our most valuable assets, infrastructure, things of that nature, knowing that we're dealing with minimal growth from a geographical standpoint and then from an overall industry, lack of industry that comes into town. So we know consistently our minimal tax base growth is fairly small, so to speak, each year due to those constraints. Does that make sense?
So are some of these jumps in your graph this last year, is that an outlier?
Yes, yes. If you look at this chart, I think that sort of depicts what that statement is saying.
So you're just saying to us, don't get too excited about an outlier.
Yeah, I mean, looking at history, I don't think it's something that we definitely shouldn't expect each year.
Well, that's responsibility, I think. Thanks.
I've got something, and it may be for you or for somebody else, is that one thing that's bothered me just a little bit is that looking at inflation, looking at the possibility of a recession, looking at what right now, what lies ahead, is do we need right now 2 extra police officers? Could we get by with 1? I'm just looking at the cost, that would probably be a penny and the tax increase?
Half penny?
Yeah, it's probably between a half and 1, I would say, if we go back to the slide that shows. This is news I shared with you just recently today. So we did receive word today that we did not receive the North Carolina Highway Safety Grant. So we had applied for that grant to hopefully pay for some additional officers in a staggered approach. So first year was going to be 80%, 60, 40, 20 as we went out to 5 years, and then full cost on to us within that. So we did just hot off the press open later today. So unfortunately we did not receive that funding. They do tend to put the monies towards roads that have increases in fatalities, which we are fortunate not to have here. We were simply in hopes that we could receive some money. So as we looked at the overall budget with that potential grant in mind, that was something that we discussed at the workshop. And so it was discussed about potentially adding 2, which we have included in here. I believe Chief is out here and may be able, if you don't mind, giving your
Could you
reasoning for
elaborate,
2.
Chief?
Hello, Councilman.
Could you come up here,
Sure.
Chief, so the citizens can hear? Thank you.
So I think initially we were responding to some of the public would like for us to increase some of our enforcement activities in the traffic area. So in January at the retreat, or was that, it was January, February. At the January retreat, we put some numbers together. We looked at where we were population-wise, where we were staffing-wise, and we came up with numbers that we could really use 2 additional positions. So right now, our staff is kind of at its maximum output. There is no more output with the staff we have. So if there's to be any more output as far as traffic enforcement, those kinds of things, it's going to require more staff. The other issue that we deal with consistently, and the reason, we had asked for 2, we try to maintain a level of 2 officers out at any given time. It's become more problematic lately with, officers with sick time, vacation time, paternity leaves, and the enormous amount of training that we're required to do now. That's becoming a little bit more problematic. So that's why we asked for 2. That's 1 additional officer per rotation. We have 2 platoons that rotate, A and B. So that's 1 additional officer per rotation. So that's why we asked for 2.
So you feel like the need's there now for the two instead of
I
one?
think based on the information that we gathered and presented at the retreat, based on the population and visitor numbers that we're dealing with, that is, by the two different formulas that we used to decide how many staff we needed, then that's what we came up with. So that's based on some nationally recognized formulas to come up with that. So.
My interpretation is that I thought it was the feeling of the board that these officers were not, dedicated is too strong a term, because that's your job. If you see need here, that's where they should be. Here, that's where they should be. But are they not, did we not have a bias toward traffic for these two new officers?
Yes, we did have a bias toward that. That's why we applied for the Governor's Highway Safety Grant. And that was one of the reasons for the bias, is that we did receive the Governor's Highway Safety Grant. It was going to restrict us substantially in what we could do with these people.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we're not going to get the revenue from the Governor's Highway Safety Program, but we also are not quite as restricted into what those officers have to do as far as grant compliant activities and that sort of thing. So, but their primary focus is still going to be traffic safety and that sort of things.
But I would add, due to the fact that we did not include it in the original recommended budget is the reason that the increase in the tax rate is there. Obviously, the only option for reoccurring cost is to look at reoccurring revenue. So that was the reason for the additional cent that was added to that, to the budget within that. So a reduction of an officer would be somewhere around 1/2 to 3/4 of a cent, give or take,
On the tax rate.
on the tax rate. 2 officers plus equipment, and the equipment piece is obviously substantial, is a little bit more than 1 cent on the tax rate for 2 officers. Probably 1.25 cents.
The equipment does include vehicles.
It does. It does. Yeah, so the information that's been included up there includes, so we did include 2, we're in a rotation of vehicles, so we do have 2 new vehicles in our rotation of normal officers, our current officers. Then we did add the $96,000 for 2 additional
So
vehicles.
it'd be 4.
If you approve 2 more police positions, it would be a total of 4
Got
new
it.
vehicles.
Yeah, the other 2 were, we try to keep
Just-
2 in rotation
right.
constantly within that. And we're able to get about 8 years, 9 years
Yeah, we're trying
out
to,
of our cars.
at least 8 years. We've still got we've got 2013 still on the road, 2012, I think, so.
Can we get 2 crews? Can we get 4?
It's gonna be a while.
We don't know if we can get anything that's listed up here.
We
Yeah, so
still get
that's yet
this
to be
through
determined.
the sheriff's.
We use the sheriff's procurement
We do.
bid process. That's actually, we get vehicles cheaper there than we do through the state contract. So,
And are you?
Sorry to go down that rabbit hole.
that's,
If we do the 2, I have some background in the law, as you know.
mhm.
For an officer to be alone is a real bad thing, horrible.
Yeah, we try to avoid that. Just here in the last 2 or 3 weeks, there have been a few times on night shift where we've had half of the night shift that one officer was by themselves. And then if that officer, and it did happen last week a couple of times, if that officer makes an arrest, that pulls them dealing with that for 2 to 4 hours, depends on the nature of it. So essentially that can leave us with actually nobody right here in Blowing Rock at that particular time unless we call somebody back in. So.
When that happens, do you notify the sheriff?
Well, the sheriff will always come and help us anytime we ask them. We all try to work together. We have a great working relationship with the sheriff. So if we're tied up, they're more than happy to come and assist us.
Pete?
I would echo what Albert and my friend Doug here said. I think that in looking at the budget and the monies and everything, obviously the big item is employees, and our employees definitely should be taken care of. But I think we need to be mindful that the property people and residents pay the lion's share of money. So what Doug mentioned about if we're looking at recession or a downturn, you know, we might have to be looking at tightening our belts. And so I think recognizing the other part of that is we definitely need to be looking at sources of new revenue. And, you know, I don't have a magic wand on that now, but revenue drives money. And so I think we have to, going into the next 6 months, be very cognizant of expenses and how the town operates. I think y'all do a good job, but these are uncharted times that potentially could be coming our way.
In all due respect, council, one of the issues that has been brought up many times in front of us have been traffic enforcement. Okay? And I feel like our police have done an excellent job of enforcing speeding and whatever has taken place. And I do agree with you, Doug, that, you know, we do have to watch our dollars, but the citizens are paying for this. Now, do they want it? Don't know. You know, we all have heard from some. So,
Well, I empathize with what Doug's saying, and I agree with it. And I agree with what you say, but I'll tell you, think of one officer and an alarm goes off in one of these buildings downtown at 3:30 in the morning, and he's the only officer in this town. That is a not good situation for a human being, much less a police officer.
okay, I'm not going to go down the rat hole, but at the De-Blowing Rock, I've been out there a few times when we've had alarms go off at 2 or 3 in the morning. And I get there, and a lot of times only one officer is there. I don't know, you know, and they're, I'm sure, more than qualified, but in today's society, I don't know what to expect. So, I don't know.
I think where I was trying to go, and Aaron answered it, or the chief answered it good, you know, because it is our job to make sure that our department heads are furnished with everything that they deem essential and do need. And if he feels, for me, I'm very strong on life safety and public safety. So if he deems that he needs 2 more officers, then you know, it's kind of hard not to take that into a strong consideration. I was just wanting to make aware, and in layman's terms, if the manager would, at 4%, and let's say, you know, we've used this example before, $500,000 home. Well, what are we looking at an average increase then
$50.
in dollars?
50.
You know, we talked about 50. Is it still around that 50%? So we were looking around what, an average of $200?
Do you recall those numbers? I want to say it's around $50 per cent.
Per cent. That's what we had
Yeah.
been
So,
talking about.
on a $500,000 number, I believe. that's right.
Did the math.
Yeah, okay, so,
It's about $200 on a $500,000 home.
for 4 cents.
Yeah.
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 I just would like to say this out loud, and it's not directed at the chief, because I've known the chief a long time. Our bias is traffic, speeding. Keep that right here for these new hires, as much as you can. Okay?
Absolutely, that's intent.
Mayor, I have a question. First, Ms. Norman, fantastic presentation. Thank you so much. You made a very complicated thing simple that even I could understand. So thank you. I have a question, more of a clarification. So the ABC store contribution increase, I'm trying to straighten that out. The 24,000. Am I supposed to be comparing that with the projected 300,000? So,
No, that's for the quarterly.
Okay,
amount of 84,000.
so that's a pretty conservative number based on what we got this year and what we might get next year.
Correct. So the ABC board even puts their money in two pots. So quarterly payments, which went from 84 to 108. So the 24 is that difference between the two. Then one-time money that they're anticipating that is not yet guaranteed, essentially. And so as profits continue to rise, that's the one-time money. So they do expect for the 21-22 year that we're in right now, is that right? Yeah, 2022, an extra $300,000. They expect the same $300,000 next year on top of the 108. But it's yet to be determined. And so they would only pay that out twice a year, once at the mid-year point and then second after the audit is done. This year, they did an extra $50,000 at the mid-year point, and they're anticipating a $300,000 after the audit is point. So we normally don't include those numbers in the budget because they're yet to be fully determined based on profit within that. But the quarterly numbers is what we include within that. So
Got it.
as we see in our report this month, another, increase within the ABC board revenues, it does appear like that continues to be the trend that they have. But their board sets their quarterly payments, and they're very conservative within that. They like seeing those numbers come to fruition, and then they dole out essentially the profit twice a year.
One thing I
Answer the question.
would say, kind of to Doug and Pete's comments, and having read through this budget, is that it's a conservative-minded budget. That depending, we don't know what the economy's going to do, but I think that Ms. Norman and Mr. Fox have both taken a conservative approach to this in terms of revenues and what we could expect from the sales and occupancy, which is 41%.
Correct.
41? Yeah, I think I'm remembering that. Sales and occupancy is 41% of
The
revenue?
total revenue, yeah, gross revenue, that's right.
Yeah, so that gives me some comfort.
I'm not seeing much comfort on the news. I hate to
Well, you know,
say that. I'm not
hey,
seeing a lot of comfort.
think about it, council and citizens. We didn't know what we were going to get into when COVID hit,
Right.
so it's all up in the air.
If, I'll make the motion if council's done to open the
I'd like,
public
yes,
hearing.
let's open the public hearing. Yes. We
I'll
have a motion to
second.
open, second.
Close it.
Opening public hearing. Ladies and gentlemen, if you would like to come up and speak, I will let you just come up, state your name and address for the record. And Tim Gupton's limited to 30 seconds. How you doing, Mr.
I'm
Gupton?
good, thank you.
Good to see you.
So, if you don't mind, I'm good, Nicole, I think. Thank you, Nicole. So here's my prop. This is the budget when you print it out, by the way, so it's pretty thick. So, Mayor Sellers, council members, and Mr. Fox, thank you for allowing us to speak as residents. My name is Tim Gupton. I live at 235 Meadow Lane in Bayview Park. And I'm a permanent resident, I'm a voter, I'm a full-time taxpayer. And I'm going to speak personally. I'm not speaking on behalf of anybody else except myself. And as Mr. Fox and Ms. Norman knows, and they can vouch for, I'm kind of a budget nerd, so I have a pretty substantial budget analytics workbook that I do every year and, dive into the budget. And being a CPA and a CFO type person, I enjoy that. So I understand the budget drivers and trends, and I understand the goals of this budget pretty clearly as a citizen. I could make a lot of, counterpoints and things based on your discussion, but I'm not going to do that. I'll just share a couple of big picture points with you. One is, as you all know, our real estate tax base is the golden goose, and it's $1.6 billion, of which 88%, $1.4 billion, is residential. So in a resort town like this, we just don't have a large commercial tax base. We all understand that. When you look at the growth in our tax rate over the last 5 years, it's gone up 50%, including this proposed budget increase. It's ranged from as low as 4% up to 16% this year. So 50% is a lot, over 5 years. So, just kind of keep that in mind. And I like to calculate the percentage of residential property taxes based on what I call the spendable budget, which is the amount of money you actually have to spend, and that's around 51%. So those are just big picture, observations, and we all know that in different ways. So my personal story is we've had a vacation homes here since 1999. And then when I retired in 2015, we chose Blowing Rock as our permanent residence for quality of life and overall cost of living, compared to like living in Raleigh or Charlotte or somewhere like that. So we built a great house in a great neighborhood. We got a great street. We got great neighbors, and we love being in Blowing Rock. So that's why I'm here, and that's why a lot of people are here. We've chosen to retire here, and there's more and more people like us that maybe have been here for many, many years, but are now here as permanent residents. So from my personal experience on this revaluation, I want to give you one person's experience with the revaluation, and some of you know this. My valuation increased 99.6%, so it doubled. So that means to me, as a retired, fixed income resident, that's a big number. So, and I'm okay with that. Once I got over the shock, my new tax bill is going to be about $11,000 a year, county and town. And so if I live to be 80 and pay this, for another 9 years, I'm going to pay, $100,000 in taxes. 36,000 of that is a result of this year's budget increase, to put it into perspective. So my property taxes increased 63%. The town's piece was not 63, it was actually 70% increase. So $4,300 more a year. $4,300 is, I am on a fixed income. I do have a budget. I'm pretty well off, but I got to make a choice now. I got $4,300 less to spend, so either I'm going to cut something. I don't know what it's going to be yet, but I got to come up with that money. And I think there are a lot of people, no matter what your economic status is, you've got those choices to make. So I want to leave you just with a few kind of big picture, long-term recommendations. And this kind of reminds me of maybe my very first budget presentation years ago. Relying on the residential property tax base is really not sustainable for much growth, as you know, 2.5%. Just the business model doesn't work. So I hope that the council will investigate other sources of revenue that are tied to our business and our tourism economy that may or may not be available. I don't have those answers, but there probably are some options there that you could think about. And one kind of new idea that has come to me is, without increasing our commercial tax base, it's an uphill struggle. So looking at what incentives the town can provide to encourage commercial redevelopment or development, whether that's changes in the land use code or whatever, that should be part of the equation so that we can expand our commercial tax base and help, share the burden of supporting the town. So just some ideas to think about.
Thank you, Mr. Gupton. And thanks for taking the time to go through that budget. We've all been through it. Hey, at least we didn't have to put it together like Nicole and Jay. Who else would like to speak? Yes. State your name and your address.
not sure that this is a good idea. My name is Greg King. My address is 482 Country Club Lane. I'd like to reiterate everything that Tim Gupton just said. He knows the accounting and budget business far better than most of us, maybe with the exception of our town manager. I would like to use my 3 minutes to impress upon you two things. The first is, it seems, as a property taxpayer, that I have an open wallet, and that I've heard you go through challenging a number of things, and I think that the budget, it's been described as conservative. I'd probably agree with that in most cases. I'm not asking you to undo that. I am reiterating what Tim asked for, and that is that we find some other revenue sources in the future so that the taxpayers aren't always left hoofing the balance of the bill. One of the ways that you might do that, and I don't know any of the legalities of this, would be to put a cap on how much the property tax rate goes up every year. The second thing that I would like to just share with you or impress upon you is this. I went back and looked at inflation from 2016 to 2021, and during that 5-year period, inflation averaged 2.46%. In 2016, it was 1.26%. In 2021, as it ended, it was 4.7%. Of course, we've all heard other things lately. The cumulative over the 5-year period was 12.9%. So if we look at the tax rate that taxpayers were paying over that same 5-year period, it began at 34 cents. In 2016, 2017, 37 cents. That's an 8.8% increase. 2018, it went up a penny. It's 2.7% increase. In 19, it went up another penny to 39 cents. That's a 2.6% increase. 2020, it remained at 39 cents, 0% increase. In 2021, 43 cents is a 10.25% increase. The inflation rate over that 5-year period for the town property taxes is a 26.47% increase. That doubles the inflation rate during that same period of time. I was mistaken. I think, is the recommended rate now 37? I was mistaken. I used the 36-cent rate and calculated with my new assessment what my increase would be from 2016 over a 6-year period, including 2021. And I would have a 40.8% increase in my town property taxes, more than 3 times what the effective rate is. So as you think about 1 cent on the tax rate means $165,000 to the town. It means $170 to me. It means $55 to maybe the average property here. But a 5 cent or a 6 cent, 5 cents to me is $800. And for the additional $800, I'd really like to be able to park downtown. I'd like to be able to get a reservation at Cafe Violetta on a day other than Wednesday. So,
Aren't they closed Wednesdays?
yeah. And I think that's part of the value statement there. You know, I don't mind paying it. There are some people who are probably not as fortunate. Most of the business owners, and I support every one of them, I hope they all do wonderfully well, but every one of those people faced with an increase in cost, whether it's cost of goods sold, whether it's cost of their rent, their telephone, their utilities, their personnel, or their taxes, They can go to lunch and come back with a new plan, a new business model in their pricing. There are a lot of us that can't do that around town. Or the decision really is whether we can go to lunch. So I'll leave it with that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your input. Would anyone else like to speak on the budget? Okay. Do I have a motion to close this public hearing?
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any additional thoughts, council, moving forward? After hearing some of the citizens speak and knowing what you know, I know everybody went through the budget. I understood with a fine-tooth comb, so, thoughts? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the budget as presented? No, we're out.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Albert seconded. Any additional discussion?
I think I would like to thank both comments that were afforded us and let them know that that is something that council is very much trying to stay in front of and very much trying to work on. Because reaches into my pocketbook a lot too, you know. I think we're all, with the town managers, working very hard to try and tighten our belts over the next year or so. So I do thank Nicole and Shane, our town manager, both for the job that they have done.
Any other comments? Albert?
Well, I'd like to thank the two gentlemen. Great remarks, great thinking. And they're in conjunction with what the manager and Nicole put in here that I read to everybody. I mean, that hit me right here. You know, there is an old saying by old people that when you have to raise taxes, you're you are spending more than you take in, obviously, and you're living beyond your means. Sometimes with the inflation that's going on now, we have to do these things, but when I get to worrying about the economy and it's all over television now and it's just about quitting watching television, there's also an old saying that says if you bet against America, you're going to lose your money.
Yes, Pete?
I would just like to thank Tim and Greg also for coming up and articulating your points. You both are business people, and that's important to have your perspective and understand, especially, Tim, you're an accountant. I know I've seen your numbers work up. Greg, also very smart business guy, so thank you for taking the time to come here. It's important to the town, the residents, and everybody. It's important to all of us to have that perspective, so thank you.
If I may, counsel? Tim and Greg, I'm not going to thank you again because you've been thanked a bunch, but I will say, we're here for the citizens. And we all have to think, and I hate this analogy, is think outside of the box, okay? We have to come up with ideas. You have hit on some ideas, and I think the council, you know, in the future, with the citizens' help, can find ways and means to make this happen. And so, thank you. Did you? Okay. Okay, we have a first and we have a second motion. If we're finished with discussion, Albert, how do you vote?
Yay.
Yes.
Melissa?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
And Pete?
Yes.
Okay. So the new budget is approved as presented.
If I may, Mayor and Council, One, obviously, starting with my gratitude towards Nicole Norman for putting together the majority of this work. So a lot of times I get credit because it does say manager's recommended budget, but
Well, your name was
the
on it.
work that goes into it starts and just about ends with Nicole. And our department heads are truly second to none in spending their time to continue to look at ways to help the budgeting process as well. I would just add, and I think everybody in this room, including Tim and Greg that spoke, understand budgeting is a difficult process, and we've been faced with a revalve in a year following 2 years of COVID that has almost flipped our town upside down in a lot of ways. We've seen numbers that we've never seen before, and infrastructure and operational needs that have lagged behind because of some of those increases within that. So we will absolutely look forward into the coming years of looking at alternative revenue sources, looking at other ways to do things maybe differently as we probably catch our breath, hopefully a little bit from this COVID wave and get back to a little bit more of a new normal that I guess we've been faced with the volume and quantity of needs that we have within the town. So again, thank you to Nicole and the department heads for all the work they've put into it. Takes a lot of effort to get to this point. I appreciate you all taking the time to work through and workshops and questions and time that's been exerted to put to where it is tonight. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving right along, we have under the regular agenda, we have Braun art request. Miss Jennifer Brown. Hello, Miss Brown. How are you? Good.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor and Council. The Blowing Rock Art and History Museum has selected an artist to exhibit a new outdoor sculpture through the 36th Outdoor Rosen Sculpture Exhibition. Brom will carry insurance and will be bolted down to the existing concrete pad outside of Brom. They presented to BRAC and during the May BRAC meeting, and BRAC approved the sculpture at that time. This happens every year. They didn't do it last year because of COVID. So the current piece that's been there has actually been there for 2 years, so now they're asking to switch it out to a new one.
And I apologize, it won't pull up. Something's going on. So here's the picture.
There's a picture.
So, it's in your packet.
Shane's thinking
It's in your
outside the
packet.
box.
Yeah, okay. That's right. Yeah, so.
Thoughts?
I did have one question. There is an artist release or liability. They have to, does Brom get that or do we get it?
I think that's all on Brom. We just have to accept the sculpture because it's public art. It's outside.
It is on Brom.
So it's all on Brom.
You mean from the sculpture, the piece itself, the liability of the artwork itself, if something were to happen, that type of thing, who accepts responsibility for that?
That's correct.
Yes, it's on Brom. That's right.
So Jennifer, the town doesn't have any liability for, and is that in writing somewhere? Okay, thank you.
Melissa? Doug? Albert?
Oh, I just want to thank the participation we've had tonight, two gentlemen and the staff. We had no knockdown dragouts, we had some good input, that's always good. Every now and then a little drag, knockdown dragout's good for the soul too.
Okay, that being said, Albert, you want to make a motion on this? Approval of this artwork.
David is the Brom expert.
David, would you like to move this
Yeah, if there's
forward?
no further discussion, I move to accept the proposed artist's sculpture.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll
Second. So go ahead, Melissa.
Okay, Melissa Pete seconded. Any further discussion on this?
I'll just have to say, based on their recommendation, I'm no art critic, so that's.
We've seen your yard at Christmas. It looks pretty good.
Exactly. When you look like the Griswold at Christmas, you definitely don't want to be an art critic.
All right, we have a first, we have a second. Albert, how do you vote? David?
Yes.
Melissa?
Yes.
Doug? Yes. Pete? Yes. Okay. All right, moving right along. Audit contract, Mr. Fox.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So if you recall back to 2019, the council at that time, which included several of you, approved the contract for a new audit firm, Martin Starnes and Associates. So 2019, 2021 was their 3-year contract period that was approved at that time. So expectation going into this year was that we were going to potentially rebid that contract that we do tend to do from time to time as the contract's coming to an end. Prior to us getting to that point, we did receive notice from Martin Starnes that they would like to increase our annual audit contract amount moving forward by 96%. So that's a substantial increase. I will say that the reason for that increase, unfortunately, is due to the fact that there are less and less audit firms doing governmental work in North Carolina. Doug knows from sitting on the League of Municipalities, the State Treasurer's Office, along with Local Government Commission, has continued to add requirements and needs to the auditors, which has caused a number of firms, especially smaller firms, to get out of doing governmental auditing. So the increase was a shock for the amount, but was not shocking that they were looking to obviously increase to some extent. So staff did put out for bid our audit work to see what type of feedback we may receive. We did receive 2 responses back. We did send out, I should say, a total of 15 to 15 different firms with only 2 responding. So I think that's telling in itself that individual firms are pretty much non-existent. Even your smaller firms are non-existent in governmental work right now. 2 firms did respond, Blackburn, Childers, and Siegel in Boone, and Thompson, Price, Scott, and Adam, which is in Whiteville, North Carolina. Both do governmental auditing. Blackburn, Childers, and Siegel does not have a current audit client in North Carolina. They are primarily a Tennessee-based firm that has opened a location here. Thompson, Price, Scott, and Adams does have dozens of audit clients within North Carolina, of which I have worked with them personally in the past. The 2 amounts that were put within the bid, the first amount was from Blackburn, Childers, and Siegel. Childers and Siegel was $24,025. The second was from Thompson, Price, Scott, and Adams of $26,500. So roughly a $2,400 difference between the 2 firms. Our current audit rate going into the increase from Martin Starnes was around $23,000. That's right, $23,000. So these 2 bids are very comparable to what we're paying for the Martin Starnes increase. We're paying roughly $23,000. One bid's at 24, the second one's at 26. The increase from Martin Starnes obviously was almost doubling that. So they were going from 23 to 45 or 44.5. So substantial increase within that. So our recommendation, I feel like I'm rambling at this point, recommendation is to move forward with a new audit firm, that firm being Thompson, Price, Scott, and Adams. Even though they are $2,400 higher, they do have a history within North Carolina, and they do have a history in local government, which, given the complexities that continue to be put down by the Local Government Commission and the State Treasurer's Office, we feel like that's a very important aspect to look at, is their experience level within that. We did put out an RFQ, I didn't mention that earlier, versus RFP, so we are allowed under qualifications to make this decision, not based necessarily on price, that being one factor, but also base that upon things like experience level and references. Ms. Norman is here as well, and she can speak to the fact she has called multiple references of Thompson Price. All have given the same positive, glowing review of the firm's work itself. So our recommendation at this point is to move forward with a 3-year contract with Thompson Price, Scott, and Adams out of Whiteville, giving not only the amount that they've bid, but their qualifications and experience that they have exhibited across the state. I'd be glad to answer questions, and Nicole is here as well to answer questions.
Isn't one of their principals a former employee of Martin Starnes? Or has contact or has some experience with that?
That is correct.
If I remember correctly, we had budgeted $36,000 for the audit.
I think 32 comes to mind, so there is, but it may be 36.
Like an $8,000 difference, I think.
To the good.
Yes, Nicole.
I think that
Yes.
required by the audit, so that would be included in that line item also.
Who performs that?
Kavanaugh McDonald's, they are a
Okay.
lead endorsed company that everybody uses.
I thought I'd found some money.
No, and I apologize, that is correct. So we're required under OPEB, our post-employment benefits, to have an actuary study performed, and
Thank you.
that amount does go to that. So thank you, Nicole. I'd hit a blank when you said that. I thought we were paying for someone else's audit, but no, that's included within that. So apologize for the blank.
No.
Counsel?
I will say that I see that they are staying even for the 3 years. And I'm glad that we do our audits and get them in, because there was a town just outside of Kingston that the state dissolved just last week. And they lost. Yeah, the town is no longer known by its name. It has been given back to the land, the buildings, everything's been given to the county because of not doing their audits and not sending them in. So the state dissolved them and gave everything back to the county.
And if I may, that's an important note for the public to hear as well. So we in North Carolina, the Local Government Commission is essentially the big brother that oversees all local government within North Carolina. So 552 towns, 100 counties, they oversee all the financial arrangements. They're third party to this contract. So when we sign this contract and the council approves this contract, the Local Government Commission also signs the bottom line to approve that contract. The audit is done the same way. So Local Government Commission of North Carolina is a tremendous asset for us to have, because they're constantly providing overview. If there's findings, if there's letters of recommendation that goes to the town council, they're aware of all that. They're a third party to that. We've had none of those. So no findings within the audit, no letter of recommendation. So our audit is essentially clean, is how they describe it. No issues, no contact. The increase by Martin Starnes, and I did speak to an individual at Martin Starnes, was simply due to the fact that we're a very small audit, and they're looking to maximize their business with their larger counties that they maintain. So it's probably not correct for me to say, but it's firing us without firing us, so to speak. So if you would like for us to stay, here's your price. And so we decided at that point to go see what the market did hold for an audit like ours, a smaller audit, but a clean audit with experienced staff. We were happy to see that what we saw that was out there was two firms willing to bid. One's very experienced, very comparable rates to what we were paying. So that does tell us a little bit about that increase as well, and maybe where that was coming from. But clean audit, no issues, no findings, no recommendations. It's been that way. It's been a very clean process. So we're very proud of that, and I know Nicole's proud of the work that goes into that. So I want to make that point.
You have a motion?
Make a motion, we accept the
I'll
contract.
second.
Any further discussion? Albert?
Yay.
Yes.
David? Melissa?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Pete?
Yes.
Okay. All righty. Moving right along. Parking update. Chief Aaron Miller. Twice in one night, Chief.
I suspect the parking update will be going on for quite some time. Solving the parking issue in Blowing Rock is not easy. And first of all, I just wanted to say I appreciate all the community members and Mr. Matheson, Ms. Pickett for serving on our committee. I'm going to call that Phase 1. I think we're coming to the close of Phase 1 in this process, and I do truly appreciate their input. And as a reminder, the reason we started this discussion about a pay-to-park plan was to try to alleviate the parking problem that we have in Blowing Rock. That's a concern to everyone. And we wanted to try to look at a way to do that that didn't put the financial burden of the parking program on the backs of the property tax, the property owners that pay property tax. So that sort of goes along with, sort of in line with some of the public comments we've heard tonight. So that is one of our goals, is to try to find ways to generate revenues to offset the cost of some of these needs. So as I say, our committee wrapped up their work, our advisory committee, in Phase 1 and came up with a few recommendations. Just some of their They were tasked with coming up with recommendations broadly about our parking program, what it might look like. Some of the things that they concluded was that our parking rate should probably be $2 an hour on Main Street, on our on-street parking, $1.50 an hour on some of our off-street parking areas, and then provide a option for free parking until such time that we're able to build some additional satellite parking areas, and then maybe we'll reevaluate that. Some of the other recommendations that they came up with was that they felt like our parking should be enforced 7 days a week from 9 a.m. until 5 p.m. with the exception of Sunday, and not begin enforcement until 1 p.m. in the afternoon after our church hours. So that was just some of the things. Most of the committee was in favor of a pay-to-park plan. It was not unanimous. There were some voices in the room who are not completely on board with pay-to-park or maybe opposed, and that's okay. We were glad to hear from them and their perspectives. There was some discussion about a phase-in approach, and that'll be something that we'll be looking at, the feasibility of that, before we make a formal recommendation to council. So there were some other recommendations. If you want me to, I don't know how deep you want me to go into this, or deep? Okay. So they identified a few goals for our parking program. Some of the goals that they came up with was to provide funds to be used for the building of additional parking, to keep our parking program financially self-sufficient, to ensure that there is adequate parking available downtown for business customers, to help with traffic flow through town, and doing all that while we continue to provide positive customer service. The next thing I already covered, the dates and times, parking rates. I think all the parking, the on-street parking, $2 an hour. One thing that I didn't mention a minute ago, there'll be automatic increases. We anticipate that most of our parking customers will be paying through some sort of app or through our pay station, which is a credit, most of which would be credit card transaction. So rather than having a timed parking, which we will, instead of having a timed parking where at the end of that time period, the police or the parking enforcement people come out and write you a citation, it was decided that it would be better if we had, that we controlled that by the amount that you pay. So for the first 4 hours that you park on street, it would be 2 hours. After 4 hours, the rate would increase to $3 an hour at that time. The off-street parking lots were identified as the Braun parking deck, the Wallingford parking deck, the Maple Street lot, and the swimming pool lot. That would be $1.50 an hour with an increase to $2 an hour after 4 hours. We also had representation from some of our businesses and our churches. Two of our churches that were very active in our committee were Rumpel Presbyterian and St. Mary's Episcopal, both of which have some parking, and they seem to be in favor. I'll be speaking to both of their church congregations and some of their committees. Obviously, it'll be up to their congregations to make final decisions, but they seem to be on board with the idea of utilizing some of their existing parking, and the town manage that for some percentage of the income. The Devant Field parking area, it's recommended that it remain free at this time. That'll be the free option for any employees in town who don't want to pay, or any other visitors who might be financially disadvantaged would be able to use that until we are able to build some more remote parking areas. One thing that was brought up is that the need to reserve some parking spaces that were resident only. Now, the recommendation was not that these parking spaces be free to residents, but they at least be available to residents. So we will consider recommending that there be a section, some number of parking spaces, maybe in the Maple Street parking lot, that may be identified as resident parking only. We would control that through registration, through our permit system, our back-end permit system. You'd have to register the vehicles that you wanted to park there as a resident and that sort of thing, but that would be how we kept up with it and enforced that. No restriction for employee parking, so it's impossible to determine who's an employee and who's not. So employees can park anywhere they want if they're willing to pay the money. So if you start talking about parking 8 hours on Main Street, that adds up. Help me with the math, Tim. How much does that end up a day? That's, around 15? That's about, it's over $20 a day, so if you want to pay $20 a day to park. And the other recommendation was to increase our fines for people who fail to pay at all to $25 per occurrence. So that was some of the recommendations that they came up with. We needed this information so that we could move forward with talking to some vendors. Some of the questions our vendors ask whenever we start talking about parking is how much do you charge? How many days a week do they park? And some of those things. So we kind of needed to have some answers to those questions. But phase 2, we're in the process of trying to work on. We're trying to come up with some way to come up with some concrete figures on what our parking volumes are, what our turnover rates look like, and that kind of thing. So we have a more educated idea of what kind of revenues that we can expect. Because right now, that's sort of been educated guesses at this point. So that's what we're working on now, and then we'll move forward with putting together some staff to start looking at some vendors and hopefully make a recommendation for a complete package to council sometime in the late fall.
All good,
Any other
council?
questions, comments? Our 2 council members that sit on the committee want to?
Chief, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much.
All right. Well, first off, as mayor, I want to say we lost another very noted individual in our community last week, Butch Triplett. It started Woodlands. And fine man, pillar of the community, his wife as well, Gina. We're very much involved in the community, and I'm sure our hearts and prayers will go out to their family and their friends. On a brighter note, Shane and I Shane did the presentation. I just introduced him. He was afraid to do it by himself yesterday. And, you know, I finally realized, after listening to Shane, what has taken place over the last 5 or 6 years in our little town. And I want to thank the citizens, the councils, for what has been done in our town over the past 5 and 6 years. We've achieved a lot. And it's been a group effort. So thank you, citizens, and thank you, council. I'm done. Albert?
I'm just wordless, speechless.
You always are. And he was. You all right?
This is probably going to pain me when I sleep, but I'm going to thank you because you are genuinely interested in the town.
Well, thank you.
And I always say, there are 3 people at a crossroads in town, you will be there soon.
He is not running for reelection. Yet. Thank you, Albert. Thank you.
I think everybody in Blowing Rock realizes just the fantastic customer service that our town staff gives. And lately, I have been the recipient of that great customer service. I'm involved in 2 projects here in town, and on one project, John Warren and Kevin Rothrock have just given exceptional customer service in terms of some planning and inspections, expertise. And then on the other project, Mr. Blackburn has been fantastic in helping us determine some utility questions with a particular customer before the project can move forward. And I'm not usually on that side of the fence, and it's just been fantastic and just reminded me of what a great and special town this is.
Melissa,
I'm good tonight.
you can defer to Doug.
Yes.
Doug?
Like Our mayor, one of the reflections that I've had has been about, the loss of Butch, being the owner of Woodlands and being a local. I mean, we've lost so many of them lately. It's just, but it's nice to know that we have some employees here on town that I think are due any day now.
Not me.
You did. She just got back from vacation. Yeah, I was making her nervous. But I think we have one that's due any day now that we're excited about. So.
That's right. Any day now.
And.
Not me either, by the way.
And not Hillary.
Yeah.
And thanking the staff for the job they did with the budget and the town crew and everybody else. That the town is starting to look nice for the summer, the hanging baskets, everything is, Bowling Rock has opened its arms up with the staff that we have and we're ready.
Pete?
A couple comments on the TDA meeting that we had a week ago. We passed a budget. We talked, or Tracy talked a lot about the time of the parade. There was some grumbling about the fact that the parade was at 2 o'clock, and usually town parades are at 10 o'clock, and some of the merchants were yapping a little bit, but anyway. Tracy then talked a lot about a calendar, major calendar, and I think his point was he thought that there should be better communication. And Shane, you were there, and I think that maybe with the concurrence of the mayor and town manager, maybe we should invite Tracy to come to the mid-summer retreat and let him talk to us about that. And so if that's agreeable, then I think we should do that. And then finally, and thanks to Tim, who forwarded to me some information on how Asheville keeps track of their money and everything. And we asked Tracy to articulate on that, which he did. And then I asked Tracy to write a letter to the mayor and to the council explaining in writing how that works, so we have it documented. But anyway, that was the sole point of the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Pete. Mr. Moses?
Has Alan ever given an update? Yeah. Not since I've been here. I've got a few, so bear with me. Your time in me, so I didn't give you an estimate on this. First, let me introduce our newest interns. We had Ellie during last semester. We have Miss Abby Napier here from Hickory. Her dad works up the mountains. I think she's able to catch a ride with him a lot. Sophomore, soon to be sophomore at UNCG. Thinking about this career, so we'll see how that turns out after a few days and working in this town. So she got a good day today, seeing how things change on a dime here pretty quickly within that. So welcome, Abby, to the staff this summer. I want to congratulate, and I've done this before, so it does sound like a little bit of a broken record, but congratulate Doug. So he will not congratulate himself, but just found out yesterday that he's been named to the North Carolina League of Municipalities Risk Management Board of Trustees. So that's one of 14 members that establish overall policy, set rates, and improve services with regards to our insurance services. So it's a big deal. It's the money maker, so to speak, for the League of Municipalities. And so if our rates go up next year, Nicole knows exactly who to speak with and what complaints to give within that. So Doug's been approved for that Board of Trustees.
Thank you, Doug.
You may not want to thank me.
For keeping our rates low.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks ahead of time for keeping the rates low. That is exactly right. So congratulations, Doug. A couple dates I had. We do have our mid-year retreat Tuesday, the 28th. That's 2 weeks from today, 1 to 5 in this room. So that's a daytime meeting. And I'll be sending out a list of topics probably tomorrow to you all to give me some feedback on, including Tracy as being a part of one of those time slots as well. Our July 4th festivities are on July 2nd this year, so those are posted and will continue to be posted with the parade.
I need to know who's going to be in the parade.
Okay, and the parade's at 10?
Yes.
Parade's at 10, so just let us know who's going to be in the parade. So that's July 2nd. So July 4th activities on July 2nd. That's a Saturday.
Aaron said I had to work.
Yeah.
Can't
Just
ever
let
get you in a
Ms.
parade.
Brown know who will be participating in the parade.
What is with you people?
It's been a busy month. I want to give just a couple updates. Staff has been busy. Just a couple weeks ago, Mr. Blackburn switched gears as a dad and invited our first and second graders here at the local elementary school down to the American Legion, where we had a come and meet your town staff and see the very cool fire trucks, police cars, bucket trucks, et cetera. That was done just a couple weeks ago. So our first and second graders here at Blowing Rock Elementary School had a chance to come as their teachers were winding up the year to field trips to see what town staff does. And so I had a chance to speak with them and primarily let them spend the next hour climbing over vehicles, Doug, from a risk management standpoint, and inside of police cars and fire trucks and things of that nature. So thank you for Matt helping put that on. Last week, had a chance to attend a roundtable with the North Carolina Secretary of State, Elaine Marshall, at Brimco, kind of giving update of how COVID has affected their staff and their increases in the number of businesses that have been filed. Interesting enough, over the last 5 years, they have more than doubled their number of businesses being filed. COVID had huge spikes during that. Lots of entrepreneurship going on in the state, probably COVID-driven, they believe. Individuals leaving corporate America to start their own businesses has seen a tremendous increase across North Carolina. Number 3 in the country based on number of businesses that are being opened up. New businesses, percentage increase, sorry, not overall, but a percentage increase within that. Also had a chance to attend the Blowing Rock and Boone Chambers joint venture called Vision Western North Carolina. That was held back in mid-May. Ron Hedrick, who is author of The Demographic Drought, was there as the guest speaker. We talked about all things workforce development and how, again, COVID has completely flipped the workforce on its head from a needs standpoint. The number of baby boomers that left instantly as COVID came on has disrupted the job market, so to speak, with the number of openings that are out there that were somewhat unanticipated versus a plateauing effect. It was a spike. And then with the number of individuals, especially female workers that have left the job market during COVID to either stay home, educate, or do a combination of other things, entrepreneurship. And so it was interesting. It was a full day worth of individuals, about 170 total, from all over Northwest North Carolina, really talking about how the job market and the workforce has really changed in the last 2 or 3 years. Childcare is a big topic that's out there. Workplace housing obviously continues to be a huge topic. And then how can we continue to maintain the employees that we have? How can we continue to do, obviously, internal recruiting with them while recruiting for the positions that opened up was the topic of that conversation. We are one of the very few people that were there that are full employed at this point. We continue to be that way, so we truly don't have any openings at this point. We always have openings that are kind of wait lists, so to speak, within public safety, but we continue to have full employment here with the town, which is a good, pat on our backs and councils for putting together the efforts that have been put together. I did speak last night to the Blowing Rock Civic Association's group. Spoke to a camera with a few members of the Blowing Rock Civic Association group here. So don't know how that turned out. I guess the video will be coming out in the next couple of days within that. So COVID-related non-crowd that took place. Tomorrow I will be attending a affordable housing seminar that is a co-host collaboration between the UNC School of Governments and the High Country Council of Governments. That'll be put on tomorrow, so I'll be attending that. Real quick, I know it's a lot as we finish up. Just real quick on our project updates. Crosswalks are just about that close to being done if we can get the rest of them painted. I think they look good. I think they're working well. A lot of our other projects from the Main Street Water and Sewer, our plants, and our part of is still within the planning phases. So McGill's working on the permitting, working on the planning phases of that. A lot's going to happen between probably the months of July and about September. So there's going to be a lot of activity that's going to be coming your way as those are starting to wind down with some deadlines. And Nicole mentioned some of that as she was talking about the budget. So next 90 to 120 days, a lot of activity is going to be coming your way as we discuss some of those projects and putting those out to bid, so to speak, within that. The part of project, we did have a preliminary meeting with McGill last week just to essentially start putting potential placeholders where things fit. So when we put together our part of overall view for our application process, which was successful, which was tremendous, this is really looking at it from a true standpoint. How much room do we need and what may better maximize the location of some of these things based on terrain and things like that. So that's coming back, on which we'll need to get with the Park and Rec group once they kind of come back with some different options of maybe the, cornhole needs to be moved from one place to the other, or horseshoes, or wherever the case may be. So they're working on that type of detail. So nothing's set in stone. We are looking at some different options there, like pickleball and things of that nature as well, within that project. And then the underground utilities project is the last one that I had here, without answering any of your questions. Continues to move along. It's still within the design and engineering phases. I think they're getting close to having some final reports over the next 30 days, 60 days. Again, and then we'll be looking for some bid documents as well to kind of get a finalized, or close to a finalized number of what that project may look like. So a lot of things, as busy as the town may be, and what you see on Main Street and side streets with the number of people, the projects have seemed to be slow moving along, but there's a lot going on behind the scenes with the planning and design work within some of these. But be glad to answer any questions. I'm sure I missed some things you have some questions on and give updates on. Yes, sir.
This is the second straight year North Carolina has had more economic development than any other state in the nation. We've gone up against some big hitters.
Yes, sir. Yeah, it was mentioned at several things that we've attended recently, Northwest North Carolina Division, along with Secretary of State, that we've been extremely successful over the last decade in landing some very large economic development clients compared to some of the other states that we've competed against. So we've been very successful within that area.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a 10-minute recess, and then we will go into closed session to discuss issues or something of that nature. So thank you so very much for, we will go back into open session after we conclude the closed session, and there does not appear to be, I don't think there'll be any major decisions made. There, what do you foresee?
Direction.
Direction, okay. So thank you so very much, and thank you for coming, and thank you for those that are viewing from afar. Hope you have a great week.